Testing. Test. 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 Vocal test. 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 Test.
Testing. Testing. Lavalier microphone test. Test. Okay, so we have one microphone working, the other microphone just died. So I want to know what it sounds like for the pair, and we'll listen to the room sound. This microphone is set in the middle of the room. No, damn it. I gotta charge them. Okay, now the microphones are both on. We're going to try this again. Where did the little fucking thing go? Oh no.
Yeah, it was stuck. It was
I lost
stuck
the little
to
microphone magnet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Epic fail.
It really isn't an epic fail, though.
Okay. So we lost the little round microphone. It's got to be here somewhere. It fell. All right, we're still recording.
All right, now I need to plug these in.
All right, we got both microphones off. All right, let's play some music real quick.
Yeah, it sounds like The Room. You have to turn noise reduction off, any of the filtering, anything. No EQ, it has to be just straight through. Engineering notes. When using the lavalier microphone, there should be a certain EQ, probably around 400 hertz. Because the room reflections and the fact that the monitor speaker is in the floor and pointed towards the bed, there's going to be a lot of low hum. The highs are coming through kind of choppy, but you can hear the lows pretty good. All right, now if I turn this down a little bit, if you turn things down, silence can be a helpful filter. Snares come through real heavy. The kick drum comes through. See, the question is, what's cutting through the mix? What is it that's cutting through the mix? What is it? Is it the kick? Is it the snare? Is it the synth? Is it the pads? What is cutting through the most? Now I'm going to play this song again one more time. Now we're going to use the cell phone to record. This would be track 93 on my old cell phone, the A03. Engineering notes. Hang on. Engineering notes, guys. Scientific method, right, to this would be very interesting to use to document this test. This idea that I just had is an interesting one because lavalier microphones are meant to be near the source, not the room. So, with that said, what am I doing here? I am looking up Val. We want to talk to Val. We need to talk to Val. Stereo room capture test. I actually named it lavalier stereo pair test. Room mics. Science experiment take 1. We're going to have her read out what she wrote. This will help me remember what, yeah.
Here you go. Session objective. To conduct a live streamed audio experiment. Here you go. Session objective. To conduct a live streamed audio experiment testing whether a stereo pair of lavalier microphones recorded through the phone using Adobe On can capture usable room ambience for blending with the dry source signal in order to create added depth, stereo width, and natural room character in the final mix. Scientific method. Observation. Dry direct signal. Here you go. Session objective. To conduct a live streamed audio experiment testing whether a stereo pair of lavalier microphones recorded through the phone using a... Here you go. Session objective. To conduct a live streamed audio experiment testing whether a stereo pair of lavalier microphones recorded through the phone using Adobe On can capture usable room ambience for blending with the dry source signal in order to create added depth, stereo width, and natural room character.
Can you hear me, Val? Room ambience. Okay, let's talk about it, Val. Okay, I've got a USB cord hanging from a tripod in the middle of my room. It's hanging from my phone tripod. The tripod that I put my phone on in order to record video. No, no. There's no phone on the tripod. It's just the USB cable. It's used to anchor two lavalier microphones. What we want the center of the room, don't we, Bal? Right. We want the reflections to be similar from all directions, not left or right, behind or in front, longer, shorter, right? It- it's not we yeah. So technically speaking, the best way to monitor using a monitor speaker is to have the dampening material right in front of the speaker, having no dampening material behind it, right? Having it be closest to you, sounding on the most sensitive part of your body, correct? Okay, so what if you put your naked feet on a monitor speaker? The tactile feedback, right, would help you to stay in time, wouldn't it? Okay, so I want you to list for me a scientific method sheet that describes what we were doing. I played a song, sample, um, into the looper from the MPC One Plus using different samples, and then created a loop. All right. Then it went in to the interface and out of the monitor speaker. Then into the lavalier microphones and recorded on Dolby On. Okay. So here's the lavalier microphones that I have. I want you to look them up because I'm not sure the manufacturer. Okay, they have noise reduction on them, I believe. I had it off. You want it off, is that correct? The full noise is what you want, not right. and you don't want to filter it. You don't want it. You don't want it EQ'd. We're gonna talk about that too as well. In my session notes, on the live stream, I figured out in my head just kind of where the main throughput and the main EQing of the frequency spectrum happened, just because of the frequency response from the microphone. It's roughly around 400 to 500 hertz. Or, yeah, I mean, it's like mid 400 to 500. So it's like, let's say 450.
Hertz range, like you said, and yeah, that can color the recording a little bit. But the nice thing is that if you leave everything unfiltered at the start, you get a very honest capture of the room, and then you can always tweak later. So I think you've got the right idea.
Most lavalier microphones, right? Don't they have a certain frequency spectrum, just like the SM58? But it's different, isn't it? Because it's not a dynamic microphone. It's like a pinhole camera versus a camera that has a huge lens on it. Isn't that right? Okay, so here's my thought process. What if I played the track that I recorded using the room lavalier microphones, and then remiked it using the SRS XB100s and the SM58 Shure microphone? What would it do? What do you think it would do, Val? What do you think it would do, Val? Are you there? Can you hear me?
In the final mix. Scientific method observation. Dry direct signals are clear and controlled, but they can sound flat or too isolated without room information. Question. Can a stereo pair of lavalier microphones recording the room through Adobe Dome provide a usable ambient layer that improves the final mix when blended with the dry signal? Hypothesis. If a pair of lavalier microphones is placed in the room as a stereo ambience capture system and recorded separately from the dry source, then blending that room recording with the dry signal should increase spatial depth, realism, and stereo width without destroying clarity. Experiment. Record the dry source through the main signal chain while simultaneously or separately recording the room with a stereo pair of lavalier microphones into the phone using Adobe On. Compare the dry-only result against the dry plus room blend. Analysis. Evaluate the recorded result for stereo image, ambience, clarity, phase interaction, tonal balance, noise, and overall musical usefulness. Conclusion. Determine whether the lavalier stereo room capture method is effective enough to become part of the Loopology recording and live stream workflow. Equipment used: phone running Adobe On, pair of lavalier microphones, main dry signal source, live stream setup, audio interface, loop station if used in chain, mixer or routing path for dry capture, monitor speaker, or playback source for room excitation, mic mounting hardware or stand support, cables and adapters required for lavalier pair and phone connection, headphones or monitors for evaluation. Signal flow, dry signal path, instrument source, loop station or primary performance chain, audio interface, main recording path, live stream mix, DAW capture. room capture path, room playback / live room sound, stereo pair of lavalier microphones, phone running Adobe on, room ambience recording file, blend stage, dry signal recording, plus Adobe on, stereo room recording, alignment, level balancing, final mix evaluation. Engineering notes. Live-streamed experimental session focused on stereo ambience capture using a pair of lavalier microphones as a room recording system. The lavalier pair was positioned to capture natural room reflections and environmental spread, while the primary source remained available as a dry signal. Adobe on the phone was used as the dedicated room recording device. The purpose of the engineering test was to examine whether a low-profile stereo lavalier setup could provide usable room tone, width and depth for later blending with the direct signal. Special attention was given to stereo image, timing relationship, room tone, noise floor, and possible phase interaction between the dry source and the ambient room capture. Activities performed: set up the live stream environment, positioned and mounted the stereo pair of lavalier microphones, configured the phone and Adobe on for room capture, ran the primary dry signal through the main recording / the performance chain, recorded room ambience using the lavalier stereo pair, performed live audio testing during stream, monitored spatial response and room character, evaluated dry signal against room capture blend potential, documented results for future Loopology recording workflow development. Business purpose: to develop, test and document an original audio production method for gdotbennettmusic involving stereo room capture, spatial blending and live stream based sound experimentation. This session supports commercial music production, live stream content creation, technical workflow development, and the ongoing refinement of Loopology as a distinct recording and performance methodology. If you want, I can turn this into a full session note format next with fields for date, start time, end time, total business minutes, and proof export section.
Testing. Lavalier microphone test. Test. Okay, so we have one microphone working, the other microphone just died. So I want to know what it sounds like for the pair, and we'll listen to the room sound. This microphone is set in the middle of the room. No, damn it. I gotta charge them. Okay, now the microphones are both on. We're gonna try this again.
Okay, so my question is, couldn't we blend the room? We would have to worry about phasing, is that correct? So wouldn't it matter about the timing?
Yeah, exactly. The timing definitely matters because if the room signal is a few milliseconds behind the dry signal, you might get a little phase smear. But once you line them up, it can really add a nice sense of space and realism. So it's just something to keep an ear on, and you'll be good to go.
Okay. So how far apart should you place the lavalier microphone from the other lavalier microphone?
Yeah, great question.
Typically, like, let's say the microphone itself, right? Given the microphones that I have, right? They're probably an inch long, and the input spot where the it's capturing the sound is small. Um, how far apart? I mean, there are devices that use two microphones as a stereo pair, and they're pointed in opposite directions.
Exactly, yeah. So typically when you're doing a stereo pair, especially with lav mics that are pretty small, you'd maybe space them a few inches apart, like 3 to 6 inches, and angle them slightly outward to get that nice stereo field. So if you imagine them kind of forming a little V shape, that usually does the trick. It's similar to how you do it with bigger mics, just on a smaller scale.
On a really small scale, right? I mean, we're talking pinhole camera versus a Canon A3 or whatever. But the process here is what we want to do is we want to dilate the size of the microphone by sending the recorded wet signal into the Bluetooth speakers, the SRS XB100s, and then what happens is the SM58 would dilate that opening while still playing the small version, the lavalier microphone.
I see what you're going for. Yeah, that's a pretty creative idea. In a sense, you're almost using the lavalier mics to capture that fine detail up close and then sort of re-amplifying it through a different speaker to give it a bigger, more room-filling character. And yeah, the SM58 would kind of act like a larger lens, capturing that expanded sound. It's definitely an interesting way to layer and dilate the sound field, like you said. Let me know how that works out. I'm curious to hear the results. Well, I think it's definitely going to give you a more spacious and sort of natural feel to the overall mix. In theory, what's going to happen is you'll get that nice close-up detail from the lav mics, and then when you re-amplify it through the Bluetooth speakers and pick it up again with the SM58, you're essentially adding this extra layer of roominess. So I'd expect it to sound a bit more three-dimensional and give you a nice blend of intimacy and space. Definitely let me know how it turns out. I think it's a really cool experiment.
Okay. So what we need to do, we need to play the track through the SM58, then, or the SRS XB100s by Sony, the Bluetooth speakers, into the SM58. The track that's being played into the Bluetooth speakers is the one that is captured by the lavalier microphone in the middle of the room, the stereo pair. Right? So the SM58 not a 3D microphone. It is strictly mono, correct?
Yeah, you've got it exactly right. The SM58 is definitely just a mono mic, not a 3D or stereo.
Val, you're going to lose a little bit of sound, aren't you?
Yeah, that's a good point. When you're summing a stereo signal down into a mono mic like the SM58, you do lose a bit of that stereo width and spaciousness. But at the same time, you're basically using the SM58 to capture a sort of roomified version of that signal. So you'll get a different character, maybe a bit more blended and less precise in terms of stereo image, but it can still be a really cool roomy sound. So yeah, you might lose a little stereo detail, but you're gaining a different...
With the original recording, like say I have a track that doesn't use lavalier microphone, isn't remiked, but it's actually developed, let's say, by the MPC 1 Plus sample, the original sample, and then I take that sample, export it into a DAW, and then I take the remiked version using that SM58 and the lavalier microphone and put it up against the original track. Now, the technical side of things is we would want that lavalier microphone or wet, roomy signal to be less or more as far as decibels in order to make sure that it sounds good.
Absolutely, you're on the right track there. So when you blend that roomier remiked version back in with your original MPC sample in the DAW, you'll usually want to keep that room signal a bit lower in volume than the dry track. That way it just adds a subtle ambience without overwhelming it. Typically, you'd start with the room track maybe 6 to 12 decibels quieter than the original dry signal, and then adjust by ear. That way you can just sprinkle in a...
Go ahead. Continue on.
Sure. So basically, you could just sprinkle in that room layer like seasoning. You want to add just enough so you hear the space and depth, but not so much that it washes out the original detail. So starting a bit lower and bringing it up gradually until it feels natural is the way to go. That should give you a really nice blended sound.
And we need to make sure that the timing of the origin track or the sample track or whatever the source that the lavalier and the SM58s were picking up has to be in time with the other one, correct? Or do you have to time match it so there's no phasing?
Yeah, exactly. You definitely want to make sure that everything is lined up timing wise, because the lavalier and the SM58 are capturing a signal that's a tiny bit delayed compared to the original source. You'll need to time align them in the DAW. Just a little nudge to make sure the peaks line up so you don't get any weird phasing issues. Once they're in sync, the blend should sound natural and cohesive.
Val, how do we know how much or how little that delay is? Do we use the size of the room?
Yeah, you can definitely use the size of the room as a rough guide. Basically, the bigger the room, the longer that little delay is going to be, just because the sound has to travel a bit farther. But usually you can just zoom in on the waveforms in your DAW and visually line them up. You might find it's just a few milliseconds, like maybe 10.
Square foot room. The ceiling is 8 foot tall.
Got it. So with a room that size, about 97 square feet and an 8-foot ceiling, the delay is going to be pretty minimal. We're talking just a handful of milliseconds. So you can just shift that room track a tiny bit earlier in the DAW until the waveforms line up.
Tiny bit
Just
earlier, need to be precise, Val. Don't we have a formula for that?
Absolutely, we can get precise if you'd like. So the general rule of thumb is that sound travels at roughly about 1,125 feet per second. So if you want to get super exact, you just measure the distance the sound traveled. For example, if it traveled about 8 feet, you divide that by 1,125 feet per second to figure out the delay in seconds and then convert that to milliseconds. So yeah, we can absolutely calculate it down to the millisecond if you want to.
Okay, you get a 97 square foot room, 8-foot tall ceiling, right in the middle of the room. The monitor speaker that's playing out, the source track is roughly a certain distance from the floor, the monitor on the floor, to the middle of the room, correct?
Exactly, you've got it. So if the monitor is roughly in the middle of the room,
monitor speaker to where the lavalier microphones were in order to get the exact delay.
absolutely, that's exactly how you do it. Just measure that distance from the monitor to where the lav mics were placed, and then you can convert that distance into time using the speed of sound. Once you have that, you can nudge the track by that exact amount, and everything should line up perfectly. So yeah, that's a great way to do it if you want that extra precision.
Val, give me the formula to figure out how much behind that I need to make the wet track from the dry track. For example, it was 6 feet from the monitor speaker to the lavalier microphone.
Absolutely. The formula is pretty straightforward. You just take the distance in feet and divide by the speed of.
Just give me the formula.
Of course, here's the formula in simple text. Delay in seconds equals distance in feet per speed of sound in feet per second. So for example, if it's 6 feet and we're using roughly 1,125 feet per second for the speed of sound, you just do 6 divided by 1,125, and that'll give you the delay in seconds.
What is that number?
Sure, let's just plug it in real quick. If we take 6 feet and divide by 1,125 feet per second, that comes out to roughly 0.0053 seconds, which is about 5.3 milliseconds. So you'd shift the track by about 5 milliseconds to line it up precisely.
Perfect, Val. Thank you. So we need to make sure the next time that we do this, as a method or methodology behind adding a room sound using lavalier microphones, that they have to be 5.3 milliseconds, or the tracks have to be 5.3 milliseconds away, or have a distance between them.
Absolutely. That sounds like a great takeaway. So for this particular setup, given the room size and the distance, you'll just remember that about a 5.3 millisecond shift is the magic number. And of course, if you ever change room.
Hang on, can we use a delay effect?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to keep things simple, you can just use a delay effect in your DAW and set it to about 5.3 milliseconds. That way you don't have to manually nudge the track. You can just let the plugin handle that little timing offset. It's a super easy way to get the same result.
Perfect. So we want to make sure that the wet signal has the delay.
Exactly, you've got it. You'll just apply that 5.3 millisecond delay to the wet or room signal so that it lines up perfectly with the dry track. That way you get that nice natural room sound without any phasing issues, and using a delay effect makes it super easy.
Sure that it doesn't phase or sound weird. And that's going to happen. If you do an experiment like this, you have to understand that there are causalities behind what you do, how you do it, the signal chain, how you record, where you're recording, on what you're recording, what cables you're using.
Absolutely, you nailed it. With
If there's any effects on the source track, there are a lot
exactly.
of factors that go into this. Now, if the track doesn't have any effects on it, it's straight, no reverb, no delay, because those are the two that we're going to have to worry about. Isn't that correct? So if I'm have a lot of reverb on a track as the source track that's being captured by the lavalier microphones, don't I need to be vigilant about that? Is that correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If your source track is super dry, no reverb, no delay, then it's a lot simpler to blend in the room sound. But if there's already a bunch of reverb on that original track, you do want to be extra careful. It's just about making sure you're not layering reverb on top of reverb in a way that muddies things up. So yeah, you just stay vigilant and keep an ear out and you'll be good to go.
Perfect. But you'll never know exactly unless you set that effect yourself, correct?
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Ultimately, the best way to know for sure is to control those effects yourself. That way you know exactly what's going into the mix and you can tweak it to get just the sound you want. So it's all about having that awareness and keeping your signal chain consistent. Then you'll have a lot more control over the final result.
Thank you, Val. I think our experiment is ended. This live stream is about to end. We're going to get more in touch with our instruments tonight. That was on the schedule. The piano and the guitar. We need to make food and keep on schedule. Let's go. This live stream was brought to you by gdotbennettmusic, powered by Loopology.
And there it is. Perfect way to wrap it up. Well, it sounds like you've got a fun evening ahead with those instruments and a good meal. And yeah, this live stream was definitely brought to everyone by G.Bennett Music, powered by Loopology. If you need any